WFLA Now will begin momentarily. WFLA Now will begin momentarily. Breaking news on WFLA Now. Here's JB Buno.
One of the most high-profile trials in South Carolina history begins in less than 14 minutes from now with opening arguments. Did prominent former South Carolina attorney Alex Murdaugh murder his wife and son? And if so, will it be proven beyond a reasonable doubt in the courthouse his family helped build? We're live on WFLA Now to kick off our trial coverage from the WFLA Now Stream Center. Hello there to you folks. JB here with you. We are accessing as many feeds as possible, but the feed that you really want is right here. As of right now, the pool feed is pointed at this South Carolina seal. And the reason that we're pointed at this seal is because of course, opening arguments have not yet begun. I have audio up on full blast, so they have not activated microphones just yet and turned up the audio. This is a seal that we're going to be seeing quite a bit over the next 2.5, perhaps 3 weeks, as, of course, the Alex Murdaugh double murder trial takes place in front of our very eyes. A trial that has been described by attorneys as being potentially very visual with some of the evidence that is going to be presented when they are in a break or when court is not in session or if there is a sidebar. This is the seal that you are going to see, and usually audio will be off. So about 12 minutes away from this camera panning out and zooming out and panning over to the action inside the courtroom itself. I'll be monitoring that feed. As soon as there's action or audio on that feed, we'll of course be paying very close attention. The victims in this case: Maggie Murdaugh, Paul Murdaugh, 22 years old, found dead in June of 2021 at the family's hunting lodge, really the dog kennel at their hunting lodge, on their hunting lodge property. Paul Murdaugh found dead of 2 shotgun blasts. His wife, Alex's wife, Maggie Murdaugh, found dead of multiple rifle blasts, including 2 to the head as she was laying down on the ground. This is going to be, as prosecutors have laid out for us, going to be a very visual trial. And of course, when we're talking about there being multiple murder victims, you have 2 murder victims in this case. Those visuals might be potentially upsetting and graphic to our audience. So I want to just start here by saying that some of the witness testimony could be disturbing in this case. Some of the expert testimony might not be for a PG audience. Also, too, some of the evidence that is put up on the stand and put up in that courtroom also expected to be quite graphic potentially. So putting that out there in advance of opening arguments beginning. Opening arguments highly anticipated in South Carolina, highly anticipated for some time, because it will quite literally set the stage for what we will witness. And I use that word witness very specifically, what we are going to witness over these next couple of weeks. The trial is expected to be in total scheduled on the docket for about 3 weeks. So the opening arguments beginning with really at the culmination of jury selection being, I think everyone in our comment section is going to be very relieved to, of course, know that jury selection did not take the entirety of the week. You want jury selection to be as thorough as possible, but you also don't want it to take an extraordinarily long amount of time. Jury selection was approximately 2 days. And that, of course, leads us to now, really 2.5 days. That leads us now to, on day 3, us getting underway with opening arguments. There's a lot of live streams of this trial that you're going to find online, on YouTube, on Facebook, on social media. The focus of our live stream And you can share this with other folks on social media if depending on what they're looking for. What we are going to be doing here is interacting with you in our comment section as this unfolds in front of our very eyes out of the South Carolina courtroom with the Alex Murdaugh case. If you want a interactive experience where we're going to be featuring some of your comments, taking some of your questions, breaking some of this down with you as a participant, this is the live stream where we're going to be doing just that. So I want to say hello to our audience joining us on YouTube Live. Hello there to you. There was somebody in the comment section before we began our live asking if I am in South Carolina. No, I am in Tampa Bay, Florida, covering this from the WFLA Now Stream Center. Reporters that are affiliated with us will be there in South Carolina covering this from quite literally inside that courtroom. And again, inside that courtroom is right here, where we are now officially less than 10 minutes away from opening arguments beginning. The jury has been selected. The jury itself is 12 jurors and six alternates. I didn't know how many alternates there were going to be. Alternates are always it's always a good thing. But of course, alternates, whether or not their assessments of the charges gets used in a court of law, that of course, they're alternates for a reason. But having that many alternates is a good thing, because if a juror cannot carry out their duties for whatever reason, whether it be illness or whether it be personal in nature, alternates can of course then can replace the juror that is unable to fulfill their duty. So 6 alternates, 12 jurors overall. Let's go to some of the comments. If you have been with us here before on stream, you know how this works. If you have never been here with us before, this is how the system works. Use hashtag HeyJB, and we can feature some of your comments out of the YouTube Live comment section. We'll be launching on Facebook Live momentarily. T. Wee wants to know, this is a great question to kick things off. Is Buster going to be in the courtroom today? I have not heard any mention, and apologies, because I've been working on some other stories, I want to actually mention here in a second. But people have been asking about Buster Murdaugh. Oh, look at this. 50 seconds ago. I don't know if I can show this video. This is great that we had this comment come in at this exact moment. Seconds ago, Buster Murdaugh arriving at the courthouse. I do not know. I don't have the rights to this video. There's video of him walking in. He's with, I believe, I'm not sure who that is. The video that I'm seeing is from behind them, but it's very clearly Buster Murdaugh. So, and John Marvin Murdaugh walking into the courtroom, according to Tara Jabber for ABC News 4 in Charleston, South Carolina. So that happening quite literally seconds ago. Thank you for the comment. This is what we do here as far as interactive journalism. I try my very best to feature some of your comments, and we make sure that you're included and represented in our news coverage. Let's go to another one. Katrina, thank you for the very kind comment. As we wait for some folks we're going to spend the next 5 minutes or so just taking some questions. The last call for your questions before this actually kicks off and goes into history as far as this murder trial, as far as going into the history books. So if you have any questions or comments, you have about 5 more minutes to type them in. So I'll look for a couple and I'll try to point out. You can share your observation. It doesn't have to be a question. It can just be a comment. I will try, of course, to animate as many as I can. In the meantime, I'm just going to really quickly share. People all the time are always asking for more positive news. I want to share just a little bit of positive news before we really kick things off with the Alex Murdaugh trial, because we were just working on a story that just took place here in the state of Florida and has made a lot of people in our newsroom smile. There was a lottery winner here in the state of Florida, and he tells a great story, and I feel like I have to share this with folks because it's going to make some folks smile. This Florida lottery winner just won $1 million. The story is on our website, and he won $1 million because he went to his grocery store. He was standing in line for a lottery machine, and he was just waiting very patient in line to use the lottery machine when somebody cut him in line. And very rude thing to do, to cut somebody in line. Well, that person that cut him made a really potentially a big mistake. He didn't really make a big mistake, but what happened was the person cut him in line, and this man, Stephen Espinoza, said, "Oh my God, I can't believe that happened." He didn't say anything to the person who cut him, but he walked over to the counter, bought a scratch off of the counter instead, and won $1 million. Great story, terrific story, and super happy to hear that. Look, we cover the news a lot. It is oftentimes so negative, and we talk about a lot of stories of just tough times, but there's a great story for you, and it's on WFLA.com. Let's get to Kalai's comment, if I'm hopefully pronouncing that correctly. Hashtag HeyJB, do you think that he's guilty? This is not a live stream for my opinion. But here's the thing. If somebody asks, I'm going to give you the honest answer to this. If somebody asked me this question in real life, walking down the street, or if this was a cousin or a friend asking me this question, do you think that he's guilty? I'm gonna give you the truth. Because the evidence in this trial is about to be presented, it would be really irresponsible for me, whether it's in front of a camera or not, to make a determination as to whether or not he is. I think it's irresponsible right now, given the fact that so much of this evidence is going to come out in this courtroom, quite literally. It's irresponsible to render your own verdict. We are all going to be witnesses here to this trial, and it's important that you try I think that it's only natural, it's human nature for people to have an idea in their head as to whether or not Alex Murdaugh is guilty of the crimes that he's accused of committing. But also, really, depending on which way you're leaning, still have an open mind, because we're going to hear a whole lot of evidence at trial, a whole lot of witness testimony at this trial that we haven't seen or heard from before. So there's a lot that's going to be taking place in the South Carolina courtroom. Some trials, we get a lot of that information, most of it, if not all of it, ahead of time. This trial in particular, a lot of this is going to be unfolding in front of our very eyes. We're going to be really witnessing all of this come forward, and how it actually, of course, impacts the trial itself and where the trial goes over these next few weeks. It's going to be very, very interesting from a legal standpoint. Let's go to some others. Bobby Hazard. I don't know the exact legal reason as to why this is not a death penalty case, but this isn't. I can tell you that this is not, the death penalty is not on the table. But if there's conviction, Alex Murdaugh will be spending the rest of his life from behind bars. Reason being, of course, he's 64 years old, and these the prison sentences that would come with the conviction would with almost near certainty put him in jail for the rest of his life, in prison for the rest of his life. From what we understand, Buster, Blue Horsey's asking, is Buster defending his father? As we understand it, Buster, of course, continues to have a relationship with his father, and that is why, of course, he's there today to show up and support him. Let's go to the live feed and see if we can listen in yet. Okay, no courtroom audio just yet. I have the audio up, and of course the video is on your screen. So we'll stay here from this point forward. I'll continue to look for some questions and comments as they come in. And allow me to just share in advance, as we kick off trial coverage, a big thank you to our moderators for what they do. They are volunteers, and they do a great job. So moderators, you guys know who you are. Thank you for what you do. I appreciate you. Our team appreciates you. And we will, of course, be doing our very best to ensure that we have a respectful and safe comment section for all. If the audio gets turned up here, folks, you will hear it, and I will hear it, you will hear it all at the same time. So this is the official pool feed out of the courthouse. Space Nerd, thank you. That's why I come to you for these important events. You're impartial and care about the facts. This is, look, the whole point of this is to find out the truth. It doesn't matter if it's Gabby Petito. It doesn't matter if it's Anna Walsh. It doesn't matter if it's Alex Murdaugh. So many cases that have risen, and also the cases, it doesn't matter if it's a high-profile case or not. Some cases get enormous media attention. Some don't get as much attention. It's important that we always stay fact-based. We will, of course, give context to the story and as it takes shape. However, we're always going to make sure that we are keeping the train on the tracks, and as I say, stay rooted in reality. You can see the countdown clock has now reached 0. The time is now officially 3 o'clock Eastern as of this very moment, and that means that we are seconds away from the Alex Murdaugh murder trial getting underway with opening arguments. As a reminder, this will be an interactive live stream. As we do these live streams, we will be featuring, especially during the breaks, when there is a sidebar, or I'll say this, an extended sidebar. We're going to look for opportunities over the course of these live streams, because there will be breaks, to engage with you, our audience, answer your questions, make sure that you have a voice out of our comment section so that you can be right there alongside with us. Also, a part of what I do, and very important to me and to our team here at WFLA Now, is correcting misinformation. Katrina, I see your comment saying that he is 54 years old. He is 64 years old. He was born 1958. So Alex Murdaugh, 64 years old. 12 jurors, 6 alternates, as Joseph in our comment section is noting right now. Eddie, thank you for the kind comment. I appreciate it. I see your comment there. To Baptist in our comment section, thank you for that. You know, it's interesting. I've always felt that opening statements and opening arguments are interchangeable. And whether or not you make a comment here, it's very interesting. Arguments during an opening statement can be, legally objected, and whether or not we hear about any objections during the opening statements, opening arguments, probably not. But that's a very interesting point, and I appreciate the feedback. Again, JB here with you live on WFLA Now. I'm looking right here in the Stream Center at your comments here on YouTube Live. We're going to be interacting with you over the course of our trial coverage, making sure that everybody has a voice. There are going to be moments over the course of this trial. Coverage, of course, when you're inside the courtroom and we have live stream access, there are going to be moments that people are going to want to get a better understanding of, and how it's going to impact the strategy for both the prosecution, the defense. We'll be trying to break down those moments when we have the opportunity to do so. But this begins with opening statements. Opening statements here in South Carolina in just really in seconds. The time is officially 3 o'clock. They have not turned up courtroom audio yet. What might be happening right now is just getting the jurors ready to be taken into the courtroom. The judge might be going over some final instructions behind the scenes. There could be a myriad of reasons as to why it didn't start at exactly 3 o'clock. And while most courts are usually, they're quite punctual, sometimes it can just go back to just little things as to why it doesn't start at the precise time. So the time is now 3:04. It is officially 4 minutes past the hour as we await audio coming up and some action on the camera. I want to point this out too. in the media organizations, oftentimes we share responsibilities as far as being a pool camera. And I want to give a shout out for a second. Court TV is the pool camera feed. They're the ones staffed providing us. WFLA in the past has been the pool camera feed. Court TV. There's various media organizations. So a big thank you to. They don't hear it enough. Pool camera feed and being the pool camera person, the photojournalist in there, they don't get, they never get credit. But there's somebody for Court TV who's providing us with the technical ability to be able to be in this courtroom, both from a visual perspective and an audio perspective, and they deserve credit. So thank you to whomever that is, really the team at Court TV for providing the pool feed for this particular trial. Joseph, thank you for that. I want to read some of the latest here from the Associated Press. Tremendous respect for the Associated Press. Prosecutors want to present a volume of evidence for Murdaugh's bad behavior and the numerous crimes he is charged with to show that he killed his wife and son to buy time to prevent his other wrongdoings from being discovered. Defense attorneys don't want the judge to admit the evidence, contending prosecutors are trying to smear Murdaugh to bolster a weak case. Circuit Judge Clifton Newman telling the attorneys on Tuesday, that being yesterday, that he will decide on a case-by-case basis outside the jury's presence. Also taking place on Tuesday, Murdaugh's lawyers agreeing to wait and see if prosecutors decide to bring to the stand an expert who wrote a report saying blood from his slain younger son spattered on Murdaugh's shirt. Again, that being Paul Murdaugh. Defense lawyers say that the shirt was destroyed before they could test it and that there is evidence the expert examining the shirt changed his conclusions under pressure from state agents. The judge denying a request Tuesday by Murdaugh's lawyers to prevent an expert from testifying that rifle cartridges found near his wife's body have marks indicating they may have been fired from the same gun that fired the other cartridges found at the shooting range on the property. Prosecutors said a similar model gun remains missing from the Murdaugh home. The defense said recent scientific advances showed the ballistics experts can't say with 100% certainty that there are unique markings linking a gun to a cartridge. Prosecutors said this kind of evidence is allowed in courtrooms all the time. Newman saying defense lawyers can question the expert during cross-examination. What does that tell us? That tells us that the experts are going to be under, and they usually are, but perhaps a little bit more so given the nature and the history of the Alex Murdaugh case. These experts that are called in to testify, when they are cross-examined, it could be potentially quite combative, depending, of course, on the conclusions that expert presents and for whomever it may be for. So here again, everybody waiting for opening arguments here in the WFLA Now Stream Center. JB here with you, and we're looking here at the court seal. Again, I have audio up on full blast. They have not turned on courtroom audio yet. This is the same feed that you're seeing across other channels. The only difference, of course, different teams presenting you with trial coverage on stream. I'm here with you on WFLA Now. There are some great organizations also doing trial coverage here too. And it is, of course, going to be one where we can only hope that there are few distractions on the way to the pursuit of truth and fact. And while, of course, we will get a better idea as to just how these legal strategies are playing out in real time, most important thing is getting to the truth of what really happened. And hopefully we will have a trial where each side is effectively able to present their case, and the jurors, those 12 jurors and 6 alternates, will be able to come to a unanimous conclusion as to what really happened and whether or not Alex Murdaugh is guilty of the charges. A lot going on here, folks, in this trial. I said on our previous stream that I have really spent the last week plus really doing homework behind the scenes. I have all of my notes ready because there's a lot to this trial. There's a lot to the Alex Murdaugh story. But as I was very honest and upfront with you about this trial, I think that you really need to have your feet on the ground in South Carolina for years to really know the intricacies of the Low Country, to know the intricacies of Alex Murdaugh and his influence in the area going back generations. I mean, really the family's influence going back generations. And really, while reporters are going to do, as they come in nationally and descend upon South Carolina to do and cover this story, it is almost impossible to really know and fully comprehend all the complexities of this case if you're just getting caught up over the last couple of weeks. And I'm saying that for every journalist. The ones who have been living and breathing this trial in South Carolina, or this impending trial in South Carolina for many months, couple of years now, they are really the ones who are going to really know every development, micro development as it plays out in real time, because this is, without question, I'll share from my experience, this is one of the most complicated and complex murder trials in recent memory. That is just the honest opinion of a reporter who has covered a lot of trials, a lot of cases. This one, the rabbit hole goes down many, many layers to a very, very dark place in certain respects. So we'll see, of course, exactly how this takes shape over the next several weeks. Go back to some of the comments as we await the opening arguments getting underway. Joseph Connor, hashtag HJB, I'm glad this trial is televised live for the public. And I don't know where that comment went. Oh, here it is. It's on this screen. Let's try that again. Joseph, there's your comment. Hashtag HJB. I'm glad this trial is televised live for the public. Not all trials and not all judges and not all court jurisdictions permit live stream access. And so this trial very well could have been in a jurisdiction where live streaming is not permitted. Courtroom cameras are not permitted. Very fortunate, of course, for us. We are able to get at least a bit of an idea as to what it's like inside the courtroom due to this being live streamed. I've talked about it extensively on streams in the past because I am, of course, an advocate for transparency. Can you imagine how different the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard trial, as an example, that's widely considered to be the most watched trial last year and really one of the most watched trials ever. Can you imagine how different coverage would have been, how much different the perception would have been if cameras were not permitted inside the courtroom? That's the case in a lot of different court cases where you don't have those cameras, that camera access inside the courtroom. Very fortunate that, of course, that judges and court jurisdictions are adapting with the times to allow for live stream access in this, really for transparency, so that people who want to be present in the courtroom, maybe that couldn't, maybe there's a reason from a health perspective or a distance perspective or a financial perspective, all these different reasons as to why, really by law, we're, as members of the public, we're allowed to be in these courtrooms to be there. But with the advancements of technology and now being able to live stream, you can be there, but courtrooms are still adapting to the advancements in technology. And it's a great point by Joseph that we're able to get this camera access inside the courtroom itself. The time is now almost 15 past the hour. It's 3:13 Eastern, and we still don't have audio. If you're just joining us, folks, JB here with you live in the WFLA Now Stream Center. And we're going to be, of course, paying very close attention to Alex Murdaugh over these next few weeks. I'm really grateful, Harry, that you brought this up because his name is often referred to as Alex. Some have called him Alec. As I understand it, it's been told to me, because I've asked, that this is interchangeable, that Alec are interchangeable. And then some will say Murdaugh versus Murdaugh. I've been told that Murdaugh is correct. Oh, before I forget, we are doing a special event tonight on a different platform, and I put this out on Instagram, and really looking forward to this. I'm going to be having a conversation in a special event on TikTok tonight. It's my first time ever going live on TikTok, and we're going to have a conversation. We're going to talk Alex Murdaugh. It's been a very interesting week in several cases. Alex Murdaugh, of course, but also Gabby Petito. If you haven't heard the news about the Gabby Petito lawsuit, that's massively significant. That, of course, unfolding yesterday. The Idaho 4 case with Brian Kohberger, developments there. We're going to be talking about how the news industry is evolving too, and how people are getting their news from different places. It's not just TV and radio like it was decades ago. The news industry and news trends and news habits are adapting and changing and evolving rapidly in the last few years. We're going to be talking about that in a special event tonight on TikTok, and that's going to be a live stream on TikTok at 9 o'clock at my at WFLAJB TikTok account. I hope that you can join us. If you're a news nerd and you appreciate just how different news coverage has been in years past and how it's really transformed, a lot of that having to do with, of course, the technology that's available. We here in the WFLA Now Stream Center, as far as the technology that's available to us, being able to present you with streams all the time and interact with you during those live streams, just with the touch of a button like that. We're going to be really having a great conversation about the news industry and about those cases in particular tonight on TikTok at 9 o'clock on my at WFLAJB TikTok. All right, enough of the plug. Back to the coverage, back to what matters, and back to your questions here in the YouTube live comment section. We know now, Phyllis. Oh, hold on, Phyllis. Bring up your comments on this screen. Here we go. Phyllis Johns wants to know, hashtag, hey, JB, is Mrs. Murdaugh's family in the courtroom? I will try to get an answer on that really quickly. I'm following a lot of reporters that are there. I don't see any mention of Maggie's family being there. But that's not to, I want to be clear. I don't want to say that they are not there. But I am not seeing any reports from inside the courtroom or in the courthouse or outside the courthouse that Maggie Murdaugh's family is. But you know what? It's very possible that they might have been spotted. I know that there's massive amounts of media out there, but I'm not seeing any reports to answer the viewer's question, Phyllis's question. Jess wants to know, how long has this case been going on for? Well, it was June of 2021, the night that Maggie and Paul were found dead. So as far as there being a relatively speedy trial, it took some time, of course, many months to conclude that the suspect in the case, investigators concluding that the suspect in the case was Alex Murdaugh. But this is a relatively speedy trial. But yes, this has been going on since June of 2021. Harry, yes, Buster is there. There is video of him arriving. He is present at the courthouse. And I'm pretty sure that he has found his way into the courtroom. I'm just going to check Twitter real quick because we're coming up now on 20 minutes past the hour. And that's a little bit long. I mean, Judge Newman said that it was going to be at 3:00. I also was trying to pick up on how long opening statements will be for each side. People asking about the time of the TikTok live tonight is 9:00 Eastern. Joseph wants to know if my buddy Brian Enson's in the courtroom. I believe he is. I believe that he is. You know, it doesn't have hashtag KJB, so Bull Rise, I have to, I can't bring it up on screen. I don't have the ability to do so unless it has the hashtag. But you were asking what the strongest evidence that they have against Murdaugh is. It's a really great question because, the first thing I'll say in response to what the strongest evidence might be is that I think that we're going to find out. It's obviously that's a question best served to a lawyer. But the big piece of evidence that people keep coming back to is blood splatter evidence. Again, alleged blood splatter that is on the clothing that Alex Murdaugh was wearing that night. However, there has been some, I want to say some doubts as to just how strong that blood splatter evidence is because Alex Murdaugh, of course, he was the one who discovered or claims that he discovered the bodies when he returned back from visiting his mother who was suffering from dementia. Aaron, has there been an official plea of not guilty? Yes, there's been a plea of not guilty. Hendrick, hashtag AJB, will a trial on the financial charges against Alex Murdaugh follow this trial at some stage? Yes. As a reminder, more than 90 additional charges are on the table connected to financial crimes, fraud, and really swindling people out of money. Alex Murdaugh is not... he's not a free man in a normal sense. If he is, if this jury finds him to be not guilty of murdering his wife and son, he is buried in litigation, and as I believe, we now have some action in the courtroom. Melanie, thank you. I look forward to being on with Justin tonight. That should be great. Again, 9:00 over there. I look forward to it. Never done TikTok live. That will be new for me. So, Lee, thank you. That's very kind. Thank you. Some very kind comments in our comment section, you guys. I really appreciate it. Again, we are awaiting the beginning. And when I say the beginning, they say that the trial itself begins with jury selection. And while I understand that is technically true, to me and to most, the trial begins with the opening statements. Maria wants to know, does Alec Murdaugh have a public attorney or a private one? It is as I understand it, a very experienced team. I've been talking to various reporters. Dick Harpootlian is recognized as a legal powerhouse of experience and is a very well-respected attorney in that section of the country. So Dick Harpootlian is who you're going to be hearing from quite a bit. Jim Griffin, also on counsel as well. But really, Harpootlian is the one that we're going to be seeing most frequently as far as defending Alex Murdaugh. Wow. So let's we don't know how long this is going to be. We don't know how long this is going to be. So as we're in a little bit of a delay, I would imagine that by now the judge is saying if he's going to go to the next, oh wait, audio in the courtroom. That's the first time we're getting audio. As an experiment, I just saw somebody saying that they are watching from Dubai. As we now get some courtroom audio and as this begins officially with the opening statements here in South Carolina, let us know in the comment section, where are you watching from? As they turn on courtroom audio for the first time, we're getting a better idea as to just how quiet it is right now in that courtroom. All the speculation, all the reports, all the attention, all comes down to this: the opening statements in the Alex Murdaugh double murder trial. Beginning with opening statements, the prosecution will be speaking. The defense will be speaking. At the center of it all, the question is, did Alex Murdaugh murder his wife, Maggie, his son, Paul, on that June
Welcome back,
21st
ladies and
night?
gentlemen.
Let's watch live.
What I will say now is intended to serve as an introduction to this trial. These remarks are not a charge on the law. I will instruct you on the law in greater detail at the end of the trial before you retire to consider your verdict. But this is an explanation of the procedure that we will follow in this trial so that you may better understand what's happening. The defendant is charged with 2 counts of murder and 2 counts of possession of a weapon during the commission of a violent crime, the elements of which will be explained to you later. He has pled not guilty to these charges. He's presumed to be not guilty of these charges. He cannot be found guilty unless the state presents evidence which convinces you, the jury, of his guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. Simply the documents by which the case comes into court. Your purpose as jurors will be to decide the facts of this case. And out of all the people who were summoned to come here for jury duty, out of all the people who live here in Colleton County, out of all the people who live here in the state of South Carolina or any place else, only the 12 of you who will deliberate can decide the facts of this case. and you'll determine the facts of this case from the testimony which will come from this witness stand, together with any exhibits which is made a part of the record or any stipulations entered into by counsel. It is especially important that you perform your duty diligently and conscientiously and in conformity with the oath that you took, because ordinarily there is no way to correct an erroneous determination of facts by a jury. Now, just as only you can determine the facts of this case, as the presiding judge, I am the judge of the law. You must accept as correct the law as I stated to you, then deliberate and decide. I cannot tell you what the facts are. You cannot disagree with me as to what the law is, and even if you disagree, you must follow the law as I stated to you. You take the facts as you find them to be, the laws I give it to you, you deliberate and you decide the case. Until I tell you that it's time to do so, you cannot discuss the case with anyone, including your fellow jurors. You cannot discuss the case with family, friends, or anyone else. The attorneys in the case, you cannot discuss it with them or any parties or anyone else that might be connected with the case. Should you discover that a fellow juror is violating that oath and that order, you are to bring that to my attention. It's also vital that you do not seek information outside of the courtroom during the case. That means that you're not to search internet websites, watch television reports, news reports, any other form of social media accounts of the case, because you are sworn to decide this case based on the facts as you determine them to be, based on evidence presented in the case, as well as the law as I give it to you. Now, later in the process, I will appoint one of you to serve as the foreperson of the jury. And that person will have the responsibility of serving as the spokesperson for the jury. That person will have the responsibility of presiding over the jury deliberations. And that person will have the responsibility of completing the verdict form representing the unanimous verdict of the jury. In just a moment, the Attorney General will make an opening statement in which he will explain the issues as he sees it, or as the Attorney General sees it. Following that, the defense counsel will have that same opportunity. Then we'll begin with the presentation of testimony from witnesses. I look forward to working with you on this case and to keep the case moving as reasonable as we can keep it moving, but we will not rush, but take the time necessary to have this case fully presented to you. We'll now proceed to opening statements by the state.
Thank you, Your Honor. May it please the court. On the evening of June 7th, 2021, at the defendant's property off Moselle Road in Colleton County, his son, Paul Murdaugh, was standing in a small feed room and some kennels they had on the property. About 8:50 p.m., and the defendant over there, Alec Murdaugh, took a 12-shade shotgun and shot him in the shoulder, in the chest and the shoulder with buckshot. And the evidence is going to show it was a 1,000,000-to-1 shot. He could have survived that, but after that, another shot went up under his head and did catastrophic damage to his brain and his head. The evidence is going to show that Paul collapsed right outside that feed room. And just moments later, he picked up a .300 Blackout, which is a type of ammunition, but an AR-style rifle. And the evidence is going to show that the family had multiple weapons throughout the property. Picked up that .300 Blackout rifle and opened fire on his wife, Maggie, just feet away near some sheds that used to be a hangar. Pow, pow. 2 shots, abdomen in the leg, and took her down. And after that, there were additional shots, including 2 shots to the head that again did catastrophic damage and killed her instantly. The evidence is going to show that neither Paul nor Maggie had any defensive wounds. Neither one of them had any defensive wounds, as if they didn't see a threat coming from their attacker. And the evidence is also going to show that both Maggie and Paul were shot at extremely close range. The evidence is going to show it's called stippling. It's almost like a tattoo, that when you get shot very close to a weapon, it leaves marks that the forensic pathologist can see. They were shot at close range and they did not have defensive wounds. And the evidence is going to show that the defendant, Alec Murdaugh over there, told anyone who would listen that he was never at those kennels. But the evidence is also going to show from these things that every one of us, most of us carry around in our pocket, that he was there. And he was there just minutes before, with Maggie and Paul, just minutes before their cell phones go silent forever and ever. Despite what he told people, I was never at those kennels, the cell phones are going to show otherwise. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Creighton Waters. I'm with the Attorney General's office and I'll be the lead prosecutor. I introduced myself before. With me is David Fernandez, Savannah Gow, John Metters, Don Zelinka, John Conrad, and Johnny James. A lot of lawyers. This is a big case. It's a very complicated case, and that's why there's so many people working on it. Sitting back in the row, we have David Owen, who's the lead investigator. We have Lieutenant Charles Gent, who's one of the agents, Special Agent Ryan Kelly, and Special Agent Peter Rudolphy. Some of the agents that are working on the case, as well as Investigator Ozzie Toledo, who's working on the case as well. There's some of the witnesses that you'll hear from as we go through this case. The judge talked to you a little bit about him being the judge of the law, and he gives you the law. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the legal concepts before I turn back to those facts. Just remember, though, he's the judge of the law, so you take what he says, but I'm going to explain to you some of the legal issues from my perspective before we talk a little bit more about the evidence in the case. And the first thing is, right before you went to lunch, y'all all took an oath. Everybody in this courtroom who's got involvement in this case takes an oath. You know, attorneys take an oath to become an attorney, take another oath to become a prosecutor, judge takes another oath to become a judge, witnesses take oath on the stands, law enforcement take oaths to become law enforcement, but y'all took an oath as well. And the reason why is that y'all have the most important job in this courtroom. Every one of you raised your hand and said that you would well and truly try this case. And it's the most important job here because, like the judge said, he's the judge of the law, but y'all are the judge of the facts. Y'all are going to listen to what comes from that witness stand and judge those facts. But you also have to be mindful of that oath. That oath requires you to do that hard job, to make that decision, to call the strike when you see it. It's the same oath. It's just as important as any other oath. This might be the most important in this courtroom. The judge mentioned reasonable doubt, and he's exactly right. It's the state's burden to prove this case beyond a reasonable doubt. That is a cornerstone of our country. I wouldn't have it any other way. It's a burden we welcome. It's what we want. It's a system that has been well tested and true, and we take that burden to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. But I want to remind everyone that the emphasis is on reasonable. Okay? It's not any doubt. It is reasonable doubt. Reasonable doubt is often defined, and again, you listen to the judge how he defines it, but reasonable doubt is a doubt that would cause a reasonable person to hesitate to act. To hesitate to act. And when you hear the evidence coming from this stand about this particular case, I submit to you, you won't hesitate to act. Again, remember the emphasis is on reasonable and reasonable doubt. The judge mentioned the charges, and there are 4 of them. First indictment accuses Alec Murdaugh, to which he's pled not guilty, but it accuses him of murdering Maggie Murdaugh. The second indictment accuses him of murdering Paul Murdaugh. The third indictment accuses him of possessing a firearm during the commission of a violent crime, that being the murder of Maggie Murdaugh. And the last one accuses him of possessing a firearm during the commission of a violent crime, and that being the murder of Paul Murdaugh. And what does that mean? What is murder? Well, the judge again is going to instruct you that it is the unlawful killing of another with malice aforethought. And what is malice? Malice is a mental state. That's ultimately going to be for y'all to determine as to what was going through Alec Murdaugh's mind when he committed these crimes. What is malice? Malice has often been defined as the intentional doing of a wrongful act without just cause or excuse. It is the intent to inflict an injury under circumstances that the law would presume an evil intent. An evil intent. And when you look at the circumstances of the crime, when you look at what led up to this crime, the evidence is going to show that there was malice aforethought. Aforethought, what does that mean? It means it has to exist at the moment you commit that crime. It doesn't have to be planned. It doesn't have to be planned for any long period of time. It just has to exist a split second before the crime is committed. But when you see this crime and you hear all the circumstances, the evidence is going to show that aforethought existed for a while. It existed for a while in the mind of Alec Murdaugh. You're also going to hear about circumstantial evidence. And a lot of times people hear, oh, it's just a circumstantial case. But the law says otherwise. The law says that circumstantial evidence is just as good as direct evidence. And what's the difference between the two? Direct evidence is supposedly about to storm out here, from what I'm told. Direct evidence is if it's sunny outside and a witness goes outside and it's sunny and they come in here and they get on that witness stand and because they saw it raining, they sit on the stand and said, I was just outside and I saw it raining. I saw it raining. That's direct evidence. They actually saw it raining. But to give you an example of what circumstantial evidence is if the witness goes into a room where all the curtains are drawn, and when they go into that room, it's sunny outside and everything's dry. And while they're in that room, they see it darken behind the shades, they hear thunder, they hear the wind blowing, they hear the sound of raindrops on the roof, and then they open up the door, and it's not raining, but everything is wet. There's puddles in the driveway, there's puddles in the street, there's puddles in the yard, there's limbs down all over the ground. And then they come in here and say, yeah, it was raining. Didn't actually see it raining, but those circumstances are beyond any reasonable doubt that it was actually raining. Now, I guess it's possible that somebody could have been standing outside their window and beating a drum to sound like thunder and blowing a fan to make it seem like it was the wind and somehow got enough water to coat the entire neighborhood. But that's not a reasonable doubt. Everybody understand that distinction? That's not a reasonable doubt. Another thing, and this is crucial, what you're going to do in this particular case, is determine credibility or the believability of witnesses. So it'll be your job to look at the evidence, the exhibits in the case, but also the witnesses and decide if it's truthful, if you believe it, if you can rely on it. And the judge is going to instruct you that you can believe one witness against many or many witnesses against one. You can believe all the witnesses' testimony or part of the witness' testimony. It's up to you, first individually and then as a product of your deliberations. And what you're required to do there is just to rely on that good old-fashioned common sense. Does it all fit together? Is it corroborated? Does it fit with what you would expect? Does it fit with what you expect how real people would act? Does it seem real? Or does something seem a little off? Does something seem a little off? you're going to see video statements of Alec Murdaugh. You're going to see body-worn camera of him at the scene when law enforcement arrives. And hear what he says. And hear what he says about that night. You're going to hear 3 recorded statements on video that he gave with law enforcement, and you're going to hear how things progress about what he says and what he says he did that night. Watch those closely. Watch his expressions. Listen to what he's saying. Listen to what he's not saying. Use that common sense. Does this seem right? Or does something seem a little off? Something seems a little off about this. I mentioned that Maggie was killed with a .300 blackout rifle, an AR-style rifle, but chambered in .300 blackout ammunition. And you're going to hear evidence that back in Christmas of 2016, Alec Murdaugh over there bought 2 .300 blackout AR-style rifles. And then not long after that, one of them went missing from Paul's truck. And time went by, and in April of 2018, Alec Murdaugh replaced that rifle and bought another one. 3 total blackout rifles that they had. One of them went missing years ago, and a replacement was bought. You're going to hear evidence that Paul and his friend were using that replacement gun. They were standing right outside the side door to the gun room of the house, and they were sighting it in, firing down into a field. And the cases were ejecting. The cases are the empty shell from a bullet, and they were ejecting out into the flower bed right there. And then there's a range across the street, and they shot it there, and there's cases ejected there as well. And they were shooting that 3rd replacement gun just weeks prior to the murders, prior to June 7th, 2021, when Maggie and Paul were murdered. And you're going to hear forensic evidence that the cases that were found in that flower bed and the cases that were found across the street at that range were ejected out of the same weapon that fired all the cases that were around Maggie's dead body, that killed her. It was a family weapon that killed Maggie Murdaugh. And you're going to hear evidence that of those 3 blackouts that Alec Murdaugh purchased, when law enforcement arrives at the scene, 2021, he can only account for one of them. He can only account for one of them. And that replacement gun is nowhere to be found. You're also going to hear evidence that the type of ammunition, the exact brand, the exact model of ammunition that was used to kill Maggie, S&B, .300 blackout ammunition, and 147 grain bullets, that exact ammunition, boxes, empty boxes of that ammunition, is found all over the property. The very same brand and model of ammunition that was used to kill her is found at multiple locations throughout the property. And you're also going to hear evidence, the same thing about the shotgun shells that killed Paul. That federal double-aught buckshot unfired rounds were found on the property, as well as Winchester #2 turkey loads, the 2 rounds in the shotgun that killed Paul. Family weapon, same ammunition. It's on the property. You're also going to hear evidence that about a week after the murders, Mr. Alec Murdaugh's father had died, Mr. Randolph, and about a week after the murders, he shows up early in the morning at his parents' home, where his mother still is in late-stage Alzheimer's, on Alameda in Hampton. It's uncharacteristic for him to show up early, uncharacteristic for him to show up at all like that, and he comes in and he's carrying something in a blue tarp, and he takes it upstairs, and eventually law enforcement finds out about that. and they go upstairs, and they find a wadded up, very, very large raincoat in a blue color. Could look like a tarp, and you're going to hear evidence that it was coated with gunshot residue on the inside. On the inside. You're going to hear other evidence of gunshot residue. You're going to hear that there was gunshot residue on Alec at the scene. You're going to hear the evidence that there was gunshot residue on the seatbelt of the car he was driving. You're going to hear evidence that when law enforcement got to the scene, he had gone and gotten a shotgun, Paul's shotgun, and that Maggie's DNA was on that shotgun. You're going to hear other evidence from DNA, gunshot residue, firearms examiners. There's going to be a lot of forensic evidence in this case. And I'm not going to get into every single bit of it right now, but I will say that a key piece of forensic evidence that you're going to hear in this case is the cell phone evidence. Alec's cell phone, Maggie's cell phone, Paul's cell phone. You know, this is all amazing technology that most of us carry around in our pockets. It really allows us to do a lot of things and to get a lot done. But this cell phone keeps track of who we're talking to, who we're calling, who we're texting, whenever we access apps. And every time you do that, there's a record kept in this phone unless it's deleted somehow. And if you're using certain apps, you can even get GPS information, where you were when you did that, that's stored on these phones. You're going to hear evidence about that. You're going to hear evidence that when you make a call and it pings off of cell towers, the location information can be gathered from that as well. And so it allows an investigation to take this and piece together what someone was doing on a particular day, and not only what they were doing, but who they were interacting with and how they were interacting with them. And this is going to be crucial evidence for you to consider. You're going to hear that particularly Alec and Paul, but also Maggie, were prolific cell phone users, to the point where Paul's friends even had a nickname for him about his cell phone usage. Before I talk more about that, there's 3 family properties I need to talk about, okay? The first one I've mentioned is Moselle. Moselle in Colleton County. It's called Moselle, it's off of Moselle Road, but everybody refers to it as Moselle. And that property is there's a lot of acres. There's a main house on it, and there's a driveway that goes to that main house, but it used to be an airstrip, and there's an airstrip that goes down, and then down the way, just less than a third of a mile away, just a 3-minute walk, 4-minute walk, 45-second drive, is the kennels and the shed that used to be a hangar where Paul and Maggie were murdered. So the main house is just less than a third of a mile away. You can see the kennels from the main house. You can see the main house from the kennels. The family also had a house in Edisto at the beach. And the evidence is going to show that that is where Maggie preferred to stay, particularly in the summer months. She liked the beach. She was not a hunter. She didn't want to be at Moselle. She didn't want to be at the lodge where it was hot and buggy. She liked being in Edisto. And then you're also, I've already mentioned, the house in Alameda, which is where his parents' home. On June 7th, 2021, you're going to hear evidence that his father went into the hospital and the prognosis was not good. And in fact, he died a few days later. And his mother was in late-stage Alzheimer's, and that house being cared for by a caretaker, and you're going to hear from that caretaker.
Mr. Waters.
Yes, sir.
Can we pause for a moment? We'll be at ease for just a moment.
Yes, sir, Your Honor.
A break in the activity here from the South Carolina courtroom, where Alex Murdaugh is facing 2 homicide charges related to the deaths of his wife and son wife Maggie, son Paul. They're on the left side of your screen, seated just a couple of rows behind Alex Murdaugh. Buster Murdaugh, the oldest son, who is there clearly in support of his father, alongside other members of the Murdaugh family. In the foreground, Jim Griffin, Mr. Harpootlian, who we noted earlier, Dick, of course, and Jim have been very much in the foreground, in the spotlight, if you will, over the course of these many months of pretrial preparation, as we hear the opening statements on behalf of the prosecution, the state, setting the tone for what they are going to be discussing over the coming weeks in the Alex Murdaugh murder trial. So, as I promised that we would do here on WFLA Now, JB here with you, when the court audio resumes, we'll go right back live. The judge is not seated, so we know that that's not going to be happening for just a little bit here. What does everybody think of the state's opening statement? I'm gonna bring this in now with your hashtag KJB comments. What did you think of the state's opening statement? And I want to make this clear: the comments that we're about to bring up on screen are the opinions of you, our viewers watching, quite literally, as we learned a few minutes ago, around the world. So instead of answering questions for the first break here, I would like the opportunity just to spotlight some comments, but we might not get the opportunity to do so. I don't believe that we will, because the judge is returning to his seat for things to resume here in South Carolina.
You may proceed.
Thank you, Rob. All right, we were talking about the three family properties. Moselle has the main house and the kennels / sheds. The main house has a driveway, but the kennels also have a driveway. And the evidence is going to show that that was actually as commonly used as the main driveway. In fact, the mailbox is by the kennel driveway. Driving right past those kennels were Paul and Maggie were murdered. I told you that you're going to hear evidence that Maggie did not like being in Moselle as much as she liked Eddystone, the beach house. But that, on June 7th, 2021, she came back to Moselle. And the evidence is going to show that she arrived about 8:15. And the evidence is going to show that from the cell phones that Paul was there at the house, the main house. And Alex Murdaugh himself says that they ate dinner, and the autopsy is going to reflect both Paul and Maggie having similar stomach contents, indicating that they recently shared a meal together. About 8:30, but 15 minutes after they arrived, Paul's phone starts moving towards the kennels. You're going to hear evidence again that the defendant said he was never at those kennels, that he was napping after they ate, and he was at the main house and never went there. You're also going to hear evidence about how much Alec used his own cell phone, and it would be unusual for him to be anywhere without his cell phone. At 8:44 and 55 seconds, Paul recorded a video. He was down at the kennels because he had been talking to a friend of his, and you're going to hear from this friend because his friend's dog was in the kennels and they thought there was something wrong with the tail. And Paul was recording a video of it to send to his friend. 8:44 and 55 seconds. And on that video, and you'll see that video, and you'll hear from witnesses that identify Paul's voice, Maggie's voice, and Alec's voice. Told anyone who would listen he was never there. At 8:44 and 55 seconds, there's a video The evidence will show that he was there. He was at the murder scene with the two victims. And more than that, just over 3 minutes later, 8:49 and 1 second, Paul's phone locks forever. He never reads another text. He never sends another text. He doesn't answer calls. 3 minutes after that video has the defendant at the murder scene with the two victims, Paul's phone goes silent forever. And in fact, another communication comes into the very friend that he was talking to, the dog, at 8:49 and 35 seconds, just 35 seconds later, and he doesn't answer it. He never answers another thing forever and ever. And on top of that, Maggie's phone locks at 8:49 and 31 seconds, around that same time, and she never answers another text, never sends another text, never makes another phone call, never receives another phone call. 3 minutes, ladies and gentlemen. 3 minutes after a video shows he's at the scene with the victims, and he told everybody he was never there. Never there. Credibility, ladies and gentlemen. Credibility. So what happens after that? Well, you'll hear evidence that Alex's phone was conspicuously, didn't have a lot of activity from about 8:09 p.m. until 9:02 p.m. And if he was at the kennels, which the evidence will show, why is his phone not with him? Why is it not showing activity? But you will hear that at 9:02, all of a sudden his phone does start to pick up activity. At 9:02, he calls, he starts moving. At 9:04, he calls Maggie's phone. Doesn't answer, of course. Doesn't answer. He calls his father, Randolph, who's in the hospital. Doesn't appear there's an answer there. He calls Maggie again at 9:06. Remember, he's just a third of a mile away. You can see it. At 9:06, she doesn't answer. At 9:06, he turns on his car, his Suburban, and he texts Maggie that he's going, be right back. I'm going to go check on Mom. And he doesn't drive down to the kennels, even though that's where the mailbox is. That's a common place to be, even though you could see it. He's called his wife 2 times and texted her, and she hasn't responded. But he didn't just drive down there and say, hey, I'm heading. You guys want to go? What's up? What's up? Right there. You can see it. He then drives to Alameda, where his mom is suffering from Alzheimer's, and the caretaker is there. And he starts calling people. He's talking to people. It'll be up to you to decide whether or not he's trying to manufacture an alibi. He gets there to Alameda. You'll hear evidence about whether or not that was usual. You'll hear evidence about how he was acting when he got there. And he's only there for 20 minutes because he's back underway at 9:44. And he makes more phone calls on the way back. Calling friends, calling people who will answer. It'll be up to you to decide whether he's trying to create an alibi. And he gets back to Moselle at 10:01, and he calls 911 at 10:06. Listen to that 911 call. Listen to what he says. Listen to what explanations he may offer. You're going to hear that 911 call, but you're also going to see the body-worn camera of the officers who arrived at the scene. The video camera they wear so that it records what they're doing. And you're going to see what he did to Maggie and Paul. It's going to be gruesome. There's no other way around it. It's what he did. You're going to see crime scene photographs. You're going to see the traumatic injuries that were suffered. You're going to hear from a pathologist, a doctor who will examine the injuries. It's going to be gruesome. There's no other way around it. On that 911 call and on the body-worn cameras, pay attention to what he says. Look at how he's acting. But he says within a few minutes of each one of those, he says, this is about the boat case. This is about the boat case. And you're going to hear some of what was going on in Alex Murdaugh's life leading up to that day. Stuff that happened that very day, stuff that was leading up, a perfect storm that was gathering, much like the storms that are coming outside today. Listen for that evidence. Listen to that gathering storm that all came to a head on June 7th, 2021, the day the evidence will show he killed Maggie and Paul. This has been a long, exhaustive investigation. And it's going to be a fairly long trial because it's complicated. It's a journey. There's a lot of aspects to this case. There's a lot of factors to this case. But like a lot of things that are complicated, when you start to put them all together, piece them together like a puzzle, all of a sudden the picture emerges and it's really simple. It's really simple. Once we get to the end of that journey, and you have a chance to deliberate, the evidence is going to be such that you're going to reach the inescapable conclusion that Alec murdered Maggie and Paul, that he was the storm, that the storm was coming for them, and the storm arrived on June 7th, 2021, just like the storms that are heading here right now, that they died as a result, beyond any reasonable doubt. Thank you.
For the defense.
Please report, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, my name is Dick Harpootlian. I think I introduced myself to you all and the attorneys, the three other attorneys, Jim Griffin, Philip Barber, Margaret Fox. It is our honor to represent Alec Murdaugh, or Murdaugh, depending on how you pronounce it. I say it's our honor because I submit to you what you have heard from the Attorney General as facts are not. They're his theories, his conjecture. Now stand up. This is Alec Murdaugh. And Alec was the loving father of Paul and the loving husband of Maggie. You're not going to hear a single witness say that their relationship, Maggie and Alex's relationship, were anything other than loving. You're going to hear about how they went to a baseball game the weekend before. You're going to hear about their relationship. You're going to see texts and emails indicating a loving relationship. Paul, the apple of his eye. You're going to see a video somewhere between 7:30 and 8 o'clock the night of the murders with Paul and Alec riding around looking at some trees they planted. It's a Snapchat that Paul sent to other people because the trees were not planted very well. They were cantilevering over. They're laughing. They're having a good time. That would be about an hour before the Attorney General said he swatted them. When I say he swatted them, And by the way, that shot would indicate it was in the chest and came out under his arm, like somebody under his arm. No question about the direction of that shot, but ended up entering skull cavity, and the gases from that shot literally exploded his head like a watermelon hit with a sledgehammer. All that was left was the front of his face. Everything else was gone. His brain exploded out of his head, hit the ceiling in the shed, and dropped to his feet. Horrendous, horrible, butchering. So to find Alec Murdaugh guilty of murdering his son, you're going to have to accept that within an hour of having a extraordinarily bonding, you can see it in the Snapchat, that he executes him in a brutal fashion. Not believable. Not believable. Now, Maggie is shot running. There's no defensive wounds because she's shot running, and after she falls to the ground and has one bullet that has hit her and probably traveled up and hit her brain, she's on the ground, and whoever the perpetrator was walked up, took that AR and put one in the back of her head. Executed. Executed. Why? This is going to be interesting because we don't know why. He doesn't know why. He's got theories of this and theories of that, but why? Number one. Number two, what was it in that hour between when he's yucking it up with Paul? And let me say this to you. His record, he was interviewed, he comes home and finds, there's no question about this, they've got telemetry from his car. He left the house at 9:06, returns at 10:01 after seeing his mother who has dementia. Now remember, that day, his father, who is dying, is taken to the hospital. Mom's home alone with the housekeeper. Perfectly reasonable for him to want to go see her. And later than usual, because his father's not there. He's in the hospital. He dies 2 days later. His father dies 2 days later. So the question is, if he leaves at 9:06 and he's back at 10:01, he literally, I mean, and he can account, the cars and the cell phone records account for where he was between 9:06 and 10:01. Now the cell phone records, and you're going to hear this from their own experts, are incomplete. They're incomplete. And we submit one of the reasons they're incomplete, and by the way, how do they find Maggie's phone? Maggie's phone was thrown out on the side of the road about a quarter of a mile away from, a little bit more, maybe a half a mile, from the Moselle property, thrown out on the side of the road. They found it by using Find My iPhone. And the way they did that, they had to open it or have access. Who gave them the code to open the phone? Now, Murdaugh. And it's not destroyed, it's just thrown on the side of the phone. What you're also going to see is that Alec Murdaugh was calling that phone at 9:06. As he leaves the house, he did call her twice and texted her. And we also know that at 9:06, as he cranks his car, as the cell phone records show that, as the telemetry data shows the cell phone linking up with the car, that phone is being thrown on the side of the road almost a half a mile away. Now that is Houdini. That is magic. That is inexplicable. Now, I was making notes while the Attorney General was talking. But let me tell you what is more believable. The night he comes home and finds his wife and son butchered. And when I say butchered, you're going to see these photographs. When I see them now, after having seen them for the last 4 or 5 months, it still shocks me. It still is tough to look at. It still bothers me. And he comes home and finds his son laying in his own blood with his brain laying at his feet, shot to hell. He walks over, he checks to see if there's any life there, although, I mean, he's seeing his brain laying outside his body, he knows there's nothing there. He goes over and tries to get a pulse out of Maggie, no pulse there, calls 911. I want you to hear that 911 tape. It is a man hysterical, in grief, trying to figure out what's going on. And he tells the 911 operator that he's concerned, and he drives back up to the house. And by the way, you can't see, I've been out there, you can't see the shed where you might see the top of the shed. There are pine trees between the front porch or the porch on the house and the dog pens. And it's not a third of a mile, maybe by the way the crow flies, but it takes a little bit longer to drive down there. And this is not unusual for them to communicate by cell phone or text, even when they're all on the same property. It's 1,100 acres, big property. They hunted it. So what I'm trying to say to you is that the Attorney General has given you his view. And again, you can't see the shed. And I'm going to ask the judge at some point during this trial to ask you, the jury, to be able to go to the scene so you can see it. You can understand the proportions. You can understand the details. Because the facts are what matter here. The facts. Let me give you another fact. You're going to hear their witnesses explain the catastrophic injuries to Paul. That his head literally exploded. And whoever shot him with that shotgun was probably no more than 3 feet away. Maybe closer, maybe a little further away. His head exploded. You would be covered in blood from head to foot. Head to foot. In blood. They seized his clothes that night. SLED did. And they well, first of all, you're going to see in the videos from the officers that arrived that night, there's no blood on him. They didn't find any blood on him. SLED's testing indicated 12 different places on his shirt and pants, no human blood detected. Period. Okay? You'll see pictures, white t-shirt, no blood on it. Those are facts. Those aren't theories. Those are facts. Another fact that is, I think, the reason we're here today. When you hear those questions on the videotapes on the night, now he's found his wife and son brutally butchered. You can hear on the 911 tape, he is hysterical. He comes in and out. It's consistent. If any of you have ever, you got to use your experience as part of this deliberation process. Your human experience. If you've ever suffered the catastrophic loss of a friend or a family member, it's numbing. It's the minute you find out, or if you see them dead, it's numbing. You go into shock. So anything he said that night is in the context of just an hour or two before finding his wife and son butchered. He drove back up to the house while he was on 911 saying, I got to get a gun, that whoever did this might be out there. And he gets a gun. But what's fascinating about that is he gets a 12-gauge shotgun, and he grabs some shells. These people hunt a lot. They have guns everywhere. He grabs some shells. He puts a 16-gauge, a 12-gauge, grabbed a 12-gauge shotgun, put a 12-gauge buckshot in, and then he put a 16-gauge buckshot in. That's how shook up he was. Guy hunted all his life, and he put a shell in that wouldn't, he couldn't fire a 16 gauge from a 12 gauge. Makes no sense. He was traumatized. GSR, their own expert at SWED said the amount of particles of GSR are consistent with that him going up and picking that shotgun up. They want to talk about GSR? Again, if you fired a shotgun twice and a rifle 6 times, you'd be covered in GSR. Those are the facts. That's not his theory. The facts. Now let's talk a little bit about these ARs. Again, you're going to hear testimony. A lot of guns. They had a gun room. You know, I don't live in Carlton County. I live in downtown Columbia. Ain't no gun rooms in downtown Columbia. But apparently if you live on 1,100 acres and you hunt deer, and you hunt whatever they were planting those sunflowers for, quail, I guess, not a big hunter, you have a lot of guns. The truth is, in 2017, and you'll hear the testimony, that Alec bought 2 Black Ops, one for Paul and one for Buster, his other son who's sitting out in the audience. And Paul had one, his stolen. He bought another one for Paul. Now, Paul was very irresponsible with guns, cars. He'd leave guns around, he'd leave guns in cars. He oftentimes left guns down at the dog pens, in the feed room. Now, I can't tell you whether he was shot with his own weapon or not, or his mom was shot with his weapon or not. But I can tell you that they weren't shot by Alex. They don't have the guns. There's no way to tell conclusively without having the weapons, what weapons those were fired by, and we'll be talking a little bit with the SWED experts about that. The sort of overarching issue here is why murder on June 7th, 2021, why is it September of 2022 before they charge him? And I will tell you what happened that night, and this is a problem. He's questioned, and the questioning is pretty aggressive. You'll hear it. He's traumatized. They suspect him. They show up, he's got a shotgun. They suspect him. And the next morning, 2 people found butchered here in Carlton County, Moselle Road. The police announced, don't worry, there's no danger to y'all. There's nobody out there that could pose a danger to you. Because you see, they decided that night he did it. Without forensics, without cell phones, without any of that. And they've been pounding that square peg in the round hole for the last, well, since June of 2021, resulting in charges in September of 22. And so, if he felt, and he did, and you'll hear it, the accusatory fashion he's being interviewed in, he may not have dealt all the facts. But by the way, whether he'd been down to the dog pens that night or not, really doesn't matter. Really doesn't matter. Because you're going to see cell phone activity that would be, let me put it to you this way. Paul's phone, 850. Maggie's phone, later than that, 854, clearly, is still being used. At 9:06, he's up at the house, getting in the car, cranking it up to drive over and see his mom. He says, a few hundred yards away, it's a little bit further than that. But the point of the matter is, he would have had to have executed both of them, got back up to the house, got the bloody clothes off, and by the way, they seized his clothes from that night. They've never searched his house for any other clothes that we know of, although that night, he gave permission and they got a search warrant. Go to my house. Go look through everything. Where are the bloody clothes? Where are the bloody clothes? And of course, I would tell you that they've woven this story together because they want everything to be consistent. What's important about that is the judge, and by the way, there's no eyewitness. There's no forensics tying him to the murder. When I say forensics, fingerprints, blood, whatever, tying him to shooting anybody that night. The cell phone records would indicate he would have had less than 10 minutes to kill him, get up to the house, get in the car and crank it up. And he'd be covered in blood. Now, if they think he was beginning to establish an alibi, there's no evidence of that. The evidence is consistent with him seeing them earlier at the dog pen. And by the way, that audio they have of him and Maggie, they're talking about one of the dogs killing a chicken. And they were debating whether it was a guinea hen or a chicken. No animosity. Very normal discussion. Paul's very happy. And we know that Paul, after that, is texting back and forth with a girl about going to the movies. Nobody's down there threatening him. Daddy's not pulling out a shotgun and killing him. For, 10 minutes after that, he's texting this girl. So, big question. One shooter or two? Two guns, shotgun and an AR. And by the way, Maggie has no defensive wounds because she's running. What's she running from? And could you shoot? Typically she had a little shed right, probably 150 feet from the feed room on the other side of a wall. Perhaps she heard the shotgun blast and came around and saw somebody or two people, and whoever it was opened up. Was there enough time to kill Paul and then find the AR and then ambush Maggie? Much more likely there were two people, but again, we don't have to prove anything. Let me sort of share the framework in which you should examine this. You have agreed to follow the law, and here's the law. Here is the law. He didn't do it. He is presumed innocent. As you sit there right now, when you look at him, you have to believe he is innocent. He didn't do it. Now let me tell you, that's so difficult to do. I get it. And the way maybe the best way to explain it is this morning or yesterday, nobody really reads newspapers anymore, but if you're reading the newspaper, looking at the internet, and you read the police had arrested somebody for some heinous crime, the natural inclination of everybody, all of y'all, is to say, thank God they caught him or her. Thank God that person is in custody. And you did something that's so natural. We all do it. You presumed the police had arrested the person that committed the crime. You presumed him or her guilty. That is the natural thing to do. And you know what? That's fine for you to do. Any other day except today. Because you took an oath to follow the law. And the law is, he is innocent. He's presumed innocent. That is your presumption. Your mental framework is, he didn't do it. They've got to prove it to me beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, what's even more difficult, and this isn't a contest, this isn't a game, this isn't who wins and who loses. This is about justice. Oliver Wendell Holmes, one of the justices of the Supreme Court, once said, jury duty is the highest duty a citizen can perform for their country in peacetime. Because you are protecting us from them, from the state, from the government. That's the foundation of our Constitution, is that the individual has the right to be presumed innocent, has the right to a jury trial, has a right to have his or her peers sit in judgment of it. That's you. And the framework is you presume him innocent, and you don't cannot convict him until the state proves to you beyond a reasonable doubt of his guilt. And a reasonable doubt is the kind of doubt which would cause an ordinary person to hesitate to act in the more important decisions in their life. Now, what makes this even more complicated is there's no direct evidence. There's no eyewitness. There's no camera. There's no fingerprints. There's no forensics tying him to the crime. None. None. I say that without any fear of contradiction whatsoever. None. And what the judge is going to tell you is, to the extent the state relies on circumstantial evidence, the circumstances must be consistent with each other, and when taken together, point conclusively to the guilt of the accused beyond a reasonable doubt. If these circumstances merely portray the defendant's behavior as suspicious, the proof has failed. Now, this smoke they've created is about suspicion. I mean, if you show up at the scene and you got the wife, the wife especially dead, and the guy's got a shotgun, you know, it's pretty logical for the cops to jump to a conclusion. He did it. And the problem is that as they came to that conclusion, they have pounded that square peg in the round hole, and you're going to hear about it. They've ignored some witnesses. I mean, for instance, that blue tarp showed up with the blue tarp. That witness who said he showed up with the blue tarp was shown a blue rain jacket that he talked about. Said, that's not it. That's not what he brought here that morning. I mean, I've talked to her. She says, no, it was a blue tarp. And what was it?
I object to him testifying, Your Honor.
Objection sustained.
I would indicate,
Move to strike as well, Your Honor.
Objection is sustained. You may proceed.
I would tell you that the testimony you're going to hear is inconsistent with the Attorney General's represented to you, based on interviews done by people other than me. So, what I'm telling you is this, that as you sit here and listen, every time there's a witness that takes that witness stand that the state's put up there, you see, you judge the credibility, whether to believe a witness or not believe a witness, whether to believe one witness against many, many against one. You're going to have to evaluate the testimony you hear from this witness stand with a critical eye. Critical eye. I mean, if you've got uncontested scientific evidence, you accept it. I've got no problem with that. These cell phone records he keeps talking about, I would say to you, are not necessarily accurate to the extent they're reliable. I will also tell you that there's going to be a bunch of people, and that have been promised something or threatened with something, that may take the witness stand and say something. But I tell you what they're not going to say. They're not going to say they saw him kill him. They're not going to say that they were involved in it. They're not going to say anything that would give you a comfort level in their testimony. Now, all of you have indicated that you will follow the law. And I say this one last time. He didn't do it. He didn't kill Butcher, his son and wife. And you need to put from your mind any suggestion that he did. You've been picked because you said you could be fair. You were picked because you said you could follow the law. You were picked because Alec Murdaugh believes that you can be fair. Now, if during this process over the next however long we're here, I say something or do something, which most certainly based on my career I will do, that irritates you or angers you, sometimes I'm a little broad. Don't hold that against Alec, hold it against me. If I say something that offends you in some way, don't hold that against Alec, hold it against me. Remember, as you sit there right now, in your mind, he didn't do it. He is innocent. he would require a verdict of not guilty from you. That's the law. That's your oath. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to send you to the jury room for a break while I discuss scheduling with everyone. Please do not discuss the case. As I mentioned to you earlier, you're not allowed to discuss the case at all until you've heard the entire case and you've heard the instructions of law. So please go to the jury room.
Each side finishing up their opening statements. Creighton Waters for the state. Dick Harpootlian for the defense. JB here with you live on WFLA Now. Just some observations that I can make. I think that are quite obvious as far as the opening statements. Of course, as far as, and this was noted in the chat, as far as the styles, and of course, these are opening statements. This is to set up, of course, the evidence and the testimony that is going to be heard in this trial. Let's go back. We'll come back here in a moment. Resuming.
For scheduling, do you have a witness you want to call today?
Your Honor, I think as we have talked to your law clerk, we do have a witness. Unfortunately, that witness, the main point of that witness would be the body-worn camera, as he is a first responder that arrived at the scene. Unfortunately, the audio does not appear to be working, so I'm informed, despite efforts of courtroom staff and even our IT folks to try to get it going. I've been also told that the company that installed this for the court is not here, and they've been able to do this. So unfortunately, given the lateness of the hour, which I don't think we could finish him anyway because the video in and of itself is fairly long.
At 9:30 tomorrow morning, and they still haven't done whatever you just said.
I will personally come up with a solution to present evidence to this jury, but I think, I don't even think we could really get him done today anyway if we started, because even the body worn itself is 20, 30 minutes, something long, depending on which exhibit we put in.
Your Honor, I think this is wise because even if we started right now, I don't think you could get the whole video played. And I'm going to ask, and I'll tell the Attorney General now, we're going to ask him to play the whole video for completeness rather than picking out little excerpts. So that may take 45 minutes.
Any objection to that?
We had prepared excerpts. There's a lot of discussion of law enforcement as they're arriving at the scene, and I have theories, but if he wants to play the whole thing, I'm fine with that.
All right, settles that. Okay. If you bring the jury, I'm going to excuse them to 9:30, if they're ready to come in.
A very interesting moment there, talking about the body camera video that will be displayed first thing tomorrow, the first full day of the Alex Murdaugh double murder trial in South Carolina in front of the jury. We'll be breaking it down here in just a moment. I would just like to give the opportunity, of course, to the judge to conclude the court proceedings for the day and get things set for 9:30 a.m. Thursday morning, that being tomorrow morning, January 26th. Of course, streaming coverage here on WFLA Now. And again, as soon as the jury is sent home for really the first time in this murder trial,
to get
we'll be back
ready
here in
to
a
come
second.
in.
Again, after the jury is excused, we're going to break down the opening statements, look at your poll results, unscientific poll results here on YouTube Live. We're also going to discuss the difference in styles in the two opening statements. Of course, the first by Creighton Waters for the state and the most recent by Dick Harpootlian for the defense, for Alex Murdaugh's legal team. Again, the jury is about to be sent home for the day, and we'll break this down here momentarily. In the meantime, you can file in your hashtag HeyJB questions, your comments, but really I'm going to be focusing on your observations as to what you thought of each respective opening statement, and I'll do my very best to highlight as many of those observations and those comments as possible. For those looking for the poll, it's on YouTube Live. You should see it pop up on your device. We have surpassed 500 votes. I would like to get closer to 1,000 if we can. The more votes that we have, of course, the more well-represented our entire audience is. So again, it's a very unscientific but simple poll. Which side you believe had the more effective opening statement between Creighton Waters for the state and Dick Harpootlian for the defense? If you don't see it on your device, look for an icon that I believe it looks like. Moderators, you guys can help me out because I don't know what it looks like on respective devices, but it might look like, of course, like a bar icon, like a bar graph icon. Take a look at this. It should just pop up in a big blue box. So again, we're awaiting the judge. And I would imagine that they're going to put courtroom audio back up for the jury being sent home. Make sure that audio is still up full blast. We haven't touched audio. I found, I'll share this to begin with. Dick Harpootlian talking a little bit about something that we talk about on stream quite a bit. And I was really intrigued by this, not from a Alex Murdaugh perspective, just he was making the point that in today's world, when you hear in mass media, when you hear of somebody arrested for a crime, how human nature kicks in, relief that a person has been arrested. That human nature, as we discuss on stream all the time, is the assumption that the person did it because you have a mugshot, you have charges, and that's kind of that kind of sets everyone at a automatic disadvantage for any crime because, of course, our legal system works as innocent until proven guilty. However, in the way that it's portrayed when arrests are publicized in the media or publicized to the public, oftentimes it's the opposite. People assume that the person is guilty because of the fact that they were charged for the crime to begin with. And so just completely removing Alex Murdaugh from the equation, I thought that was an interesting piece of the opening statement from Dick Harpootlian, just because I believe it to be very, very true in the respect that human nature is something that we can't change. It's something that is, of course, ingrained in us. So when he was pointing over to his client, Alex Murdaugh, and saying repeatedly over and over again, he didn't do it, he didn't do it, he is trying to hammer home the point that it's up to the state, of course, to prove that there is, that beyond a reasonable doubt, that Alex Murdaugh is guilty of the charges of murdering Paul Murdaugh and Maggie Murdaugh. It's just going to be really interesting to see how this is all, of course, how this plays out over the course of the next few weeks. Waiting for the judge to be sent home. Excuse me, the judge to send the jury home. I was also going to be extremely surprised if they went to their first witness tonight. It is 4:43, as they noted there in the courtroom. As they noted in the courtroom, as I read some of your comments coming in, you guys, even if they played if they played the entirety of the body camera video that is going to be, played tomorrow morning, we wouldn't be able to get through it all today. And I am all in favor of being able to not have to break it up in half, to be able to get through it. And it was interesting too that the state was planning on presenting excerpts of the video, and then Harpootlian responded saying, no, we request for the entirety of that video to be played, all 45 roughly minutes of it, so that it's not paraphrased, and then the state agreeing to that request. That means that tomorrow morning, that video will be played back in its entirety, and that will be the first piece of evidence that is played back in this trial. We're up to 900 votes in our poll. Very interesting results. One side is clearly winning. We'll come back to that here in a moment, and we'll talk a little bit about the styles. I'm not going to respond to questions just yet. I would really like to, and I'm going to ask that you guys hold your hashtag HJB questions and comments and your observations until the jury is sent home. And I don't believe that they have. Normally, court TV especially, them being the pool camera feed, they would put up courtroom audio for the judge officially ending procedures for the day, banging the gavel, and then everyone leaves. If they skip that, I'd be very surprised. So if the jury is still in the jury room, they're getting seated, awaiting instruction as to what's going to happen. Because usually what would happen too, the judge would give, especially on the first time this is happening, sending the jury home for the night, the judge is, in more cases than not, going to give very specific instructions about, and they probably already have, but it's a good reminder to not discuss the case, and to do your very best to shield yourself from anything that could sway, of course, any coverage in the media, reports, speculation, social media, gossip, so on and so forth, doing their very best to stay focused on the oath that they took and the responsibility that is now before them to render a decision as to the charges in this case. So we'll, of course, see if that happens. I expect it to, and I think it is. Back here in a moment.
If you can bring the jury in. Get them to come in. It's 18 people. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We are through for the day. We're going to recess till 9:30 tomorrow morning. Remember the oath that you took and the instructions that you're not to discuss the case with anyone. You're not to engage in any search for further details through any means. And we need you back at 9:30 tomorrow morning following the instructions given to you by the bailiffs as to where to report to. You'll never come through the courtroom to get to the jury room. And we'll see you at 9:30 tomorrow morning. You may go. All right. We're in recess as to the jury. Go.
How about that? With all the tension in the room. A moment of laughter because the judge said we are in recess until 9:30 tomorrow morning, and no one moved. And he was a little confused and said, "No, you may go," waiting for them all to get up. A very rare moment of laughter, but perhaps to the courtroom's relief just a little bit, given just how tense things must be inside that courtroom in South Carolina.
If everyone will be seated.
And perhaps things are not
Just
over
a
just yet.
couple of
Let's listen.
things with regard to the daily transcript. Is that what is the problem? Is that system? Can someone tell me? Is that it?
Yes.
Okay, well, this transcript is not an official transcript. It's not, the official court reporters are the two South Carolina judicial branch employees and not the company that produces this transcript that those in the media or the parties may be interested in purchasing. Want the parties to acknowledge that they understand that any transcript produced by anyone other than the court reporters is not a verified true copy transcript.
Your Honor, we understand that. Absolutely. Both of us, though, have a concern that this microphone, and we've expressed, I mean, if it's picked up conversations between us and our client, or we're concerned that that not appear in the daily transcript.
All right, and the transcript, I mean, that microphone is by the same outfit? Whose
We're told-
microphone is it?
We're told when that clock in front of you is on, it's on, right?
Yes, that microphone, the microphone on the AG's table, the microphone in front of the clerk's bench, and the microphone you are speaking into that has the mute button, those are FTR, or the record microphones. That's what's giving you the daily transcripts. And it is also tied to the PA system.
So that, I don't really care about the daily transcripts. My problem is that we can't get audio in the courtroom, and that's what we're gonna try to fix tonight.
Well, we're talking about one thing right now.
Yes, sir.
So with regard to the, for the record transcript, the non-official, and is that where the problem is now with, that you all have been working on? Or is that now been resolved with that company?
The problem with FTR and the draft transcripts, the daily transcripts, that is working fine. When we had to move some of the equipment around earlier, it messed up some of the wiring.
For the audio?
Yes, sir.
All right. And is that what you're working on, said you'll be working on overnight or
We're
something?
gonna, yes, sir, we're gonna come up with a solution that's independent of any of the court-provided facilities, and we'll come up with something. I'll go home and get a guitar amplifier if I need to. But yeah, we'll get something done.
Is there anything else before we break for the day?
Say, Your Honor.
Nothing for the defense. 9:30, am I correct about that?
9:30.
Yes, sir.
All right, court will be in recess till 9:30.
Very grateful for the wide shot here as we look here one final time inside the South Carolina courtroom where Alex Murdaugh, seen there on your screen, will be in that courtroom, a courthouse that his family's legacy, quite literally as part of this courtroom, his family, for multiple generations, calling this courthouse home. As we look here live at Alex Murdaugh, again, the Murdaugh family, county solicitors going back multiple generations. Alex Murdaugh. The audio is off. I did not kill audio, so if anybody's asking, put up the audio. It was turned off by the camera team inside. I recognize some of the faces here too. Some of the reporters, of course, that have been covering this case. colleagues of ours. So let's continue the conversation as we look here at Alex Murdaugh. We're going to be, of course, spotlighting some of your hashtag HJB observations here in a second, but don't punch them in just yet because I want to focus on exactly what we are seeing. Alex Murdaugh is talking to, I believe, yes, law enforcement personnel with the Halton County Sheriff's Office. Dick Harpootlian there for the defense, lead counsel on the right. Jim Griffin, his back is turned towards us on the left. A handshake there between Alex and Dick. And if it's very apparent when Alec turns to the side, he has lost weight. That is something that people have been making note of on social media. You can clearly tell that he has lost a considerable amount of weight in the months ahead of this trial getting underway. All right, so chandelier cam introduced for the first time. That is a bit of an odd. Oh, I understand why. This is the neutral position for this camera shot. There's another camera shot that is, when they go to a break, it is designed to zoom in on the seal, but this is a shot on the other side of the room. I don't know how many cameras they have in there, but this is a different shot that I believe I wouldn't be able to see the seal straight on. So, but this, of course, points to this being the end of the coverage for today and brings us to you, our viewers, and your responses to what you thought of the opening statements in the Alex Murdaugh murder trial. We're going to get to your comments here in just a second. I would just like to finish my observations. Just a very different set of styles that we had there between Creighton Waters, Creighton Waters, who was animated. It depends on your definition of shouting. I don't think you could make the argument as to whether or not he was shouting. He was raising his voice quite a bit. Emphatic with some of the points that he was making as the state introduces its case. And Dick Harpootlian, theatrical, but in a different way. Very even-toned throughout, volume-wise, also very even over the course of his opening statement, but theatrical in his own respect, in that he asked Alex Murdaugh to stand up earlier on in his opening statement. Stand up in front of the court. He said, "Alex, stand up." He went over to the witness chair, where we're going to hear testimony in this case. He was referencing that section of the courtroom, using the courtroom space, while, again, very different contrast in styles. Also, too, Dick Harpootlian apologizing in advance for his, I believe the word that he used, I was trying to hear in my earpiece here, I believe the word that he used was his abrupt style of being an attorney and being a courtroom attorney. That was another noteworthy moment. He said, "Please hold it against me. Don't hold it against Alex." That interesting as well. It's, if one thing can really be learned from the opening statement, other than the two cases that were put in, as far as the state's case and the defense's case, as we now officially lose the feed, is that the styles of these two sides are going to be quite different, and that was clearly on display from day one, as far as the seated 12-member jury and 6 alternates there as well. So, hey, to Team Brittany, I saw that there was a Lisa's comment was that, to me, that is an okay comment. Team Brittany, as far as and I'll say it, Lisa thought that Harpootlian was annoying in his style, and that, of course, an interesting observation. We're going to spotlight some of the observations, but before we spotlight the observations out of the comment section, I want you guys to keep it focused on the opening statements and what you thought of those opening statements and what you thought of the two voices we're going to be really hearing from quite a bit over the next couple of weeks, and that being, of course, Creighton Waters and Dick Harpootlian. We'll answer your questions, but I really want you guys to stay focused on sharing your observations. And really quickly, before we do that, we're going to go to the unscientific poll. This is a YouTube poll, wasn't done scientifically. Which side had the more effective opening statement? We have 1,250 votes exactly as of this moment, and 73% say the state was more effective, and 27% say the defense and Harpootlian was more effective. All right, let's get to your thoughts. If you use hashtag KJB, I will spotlight your comment or try my very best to do so. If you don't use the hashtag, we'll just let your comment go on by. I want you guys to be able to communicate with your fellow commenters here, share your observations. But if you want it to be animated on screen, then we ask that you use the hashtag. Brittany Marie says, hashtag KJB. We'll start here with a question as people type in some of their thoughts. Why do you think the defense was so unnecessarily graphic when describing the condition that Paul was in post-mortem? That repetition felt purposeful, but why? How would that benefit the defense? Look, I can't speak to the strategy behind it, but what I can say is that it has been articulated to us that this is going to be quite a graphic. Let's start by saying this. It is going to be a very visual trial as far as the evidence. And those visuals will, many of those visuals will be graphic as it's been told to us. So this might be, Brittany, just a sign of things to come. If you thought the description and the repeating of the description was graphic, when the visuals are actually displayed in the courtroom, and depending on exactly what we see from that crime scene, that might be extraordinarily more so as far as how graphic it is in nature. All right, Riva, hashtag KJB. I expected more focus from Harpootlian. He made good points, but was disjointed. Interesting. RR, hashtag KJB. I thought that they both had their own strengths. Okay. Lil Patty, hashtag KJB. I feel the lawyer for the state was more passionate than the defense attorney. I think that passion's an interesting word, and you heard him raise his voice, did Mr. Waters. And yeah, passion's an interesting word to describe it. Zachary shares with us, hashtag KJB. I thought that Harpootlian, misspelt here, showed his experience, as did Waters. It's going to be a great battle of experienced lawyers, but that was a great opening defense case, putting my feelings aside. Okay, yeah. Here's the thing. You could believe in your heart, based, of course, on what we know to this point, that you have more of a feeling that either Alex Murdaugh is guilty of murdering his wife and son, or the opposite, innocent of murdering his wife and son, and still feel that the opposite side had the more effective opening statement. It's important that you guys are objective in that way. Just because you have this notion going in and you feel like you're leaning one way or another, let the cases come, rise to the top. Let the evidence and the testimony over the next few weeks rise to the top, and really try to listen. Just listen to as much of it as possible, so that you guys feel really confident and educated when it comes to, look, verdict coverage, trial coverage is going to culminate with verdict coverage, and that is going to be a moment, a very interesting moment. And you are most informed as a viewer if you really listen to some of the evidence that is, and of course, observe with your own two eyes, because this is going to be a very visual case. So keep that in mind too. If there are any missteps, Ryan, is a mistrial possible? Yes. You hate to see it. But as far as the potential for there being a mistrial, that occurs with just about every case. And you hope that everything from both sides is executed appropriately, so that we don't have a mistrial. Taylor wants to know, why do you think they both want to play the full video now instead of snippets? This is a great question. I'm glad you asked it, and it's a little bit of the opening chess move, if you will, from an evidence standpoint. Waters said that he was, well, let's start with Harpootlian, because they were talking about how you wouldn't be able to get, if you started the video tonight, you wouldn't be able to get through the roughly 45 minutes of it. You'd have to finish it tomorrow morning, because they're going to, of course, adjourn for the day at 5 o'clock. So you're not going to be able to get through the entirety of the video. That was when Harpootlian said, this is an interesting moment, it says, we request that the entirety of the video be played, all 45 minutes of it, roughly. And Waters responded, no, well, we were going to be playing some snippets, some excerpts of that video, but consenting to playing the entirety of the video. This is an interesting moment in this one regard, especially to me. If Waters says, no, we don't want to play the entirety of the video, says, no, we've prepared excerpts and we're going to play the excerpts, we don't want to play the entirety of the video, that's not a good way to kick off the evidence section of this trial, because why don't you want the entirety of the video played if that's the case? So in a way, his hand was somewhat forced into playing the entirety of the video. This could be largely inconsequential. We'll of course find out more tomorrow as we see this get presented in a court of law. But Waters really had no. It would have been extremely surprising if he said, no, we don't want to play the whole video. We just want to play the portions that we want to play. Instead, he consented to the request from the defense to play the entirety of the video. Johnny says, #KJB, seems like the prosecution was going for passionate but came off more like bad-tempered. This is so important of a comment, Johnny, because how a attorney comes across to individual jurors is so important. And how effective they are at demonstrating their points, how relatable they are, how convincing they are. This is, I wish that we had a legal expert on, because they could articulate this way better than I ever could. But effectively establishing trustworthy communication, a lane of communication between yourself and individual jurors is so important to be an effective presenter of evidence and of testimony, or questioning witnesses on the stand. So very, very interesting that Johnny says that came off more like bad-tempered. Are there any jurors in the room tonight that are going home thinking, man, the state's prosecutor, he was bad-tempered to me? That'll be very interesting if that is something that is going through the mind of one of the jurors, or maybe more, or nothing. It's just interesting observation. Blue Horsey, #KJB, what is your take on the opening statement? Some video that places Alex's voice within it was in 3 minutes. I'll share this. It was interesting to me to note. I'm never going to give my opinion on like which side was more effective, or which lawyer did a better job, or what evidence is the big glaring piece of it. I'm going to try to keep things as objective as possible, as unbiased as possible. But I will say this. There clearly is a theme being established here as far as in 3 regards to the evidence, okay? I categorize this in 3 ways: ballistics, blood splatter, and digital forensics. The cell phone is the digital forensics, really, that is going to be largely at play here. And the expert testimony is really going to be fascinating. And the cross-examination I noted earlier could be potentially explosive because of how each side is going to try to discredit any testimony, expert testimony, that they believe to be invalid, inconsequential, or just irrelevant. a few more comments, and we'll be 9 a.m. tomorrow. Two 9 p.m. or 2 9 o'clocks to talk about. I will be on TikTok live tonight talking about this more. 9 o'clock on my @WFLAJB TikTok, 9 p.m. and then 9 a.m. tomorrow morning, we resume our coverage right here, talking with you to set up the day's events. I hope you'll join us. You know, I can't say your name. I'll call you Mr. Ferguson. I don't shy away from, I'm going to refer to you as Mr. Ferguson. Mr. Ferguson, #AJB, can his mom testify to his behavior after the murders given her condition? Her mother, Alex Murdaugh's mother, suffering from dementia. It's a great question. I don't think so. I don't think that even her statements can be used in a court of law. She suffers from dementia. It's sad, but it's a fact of the case. And of course, why is this consequential? Because she is alleged to have received a visit from Alex Murdaugh the night that the murders took place. And that being, of course, part of the defense's timeline of events. But then the digital forensics, does that add up? Does the cell phone information, the pings, add up? Harry, no, I'm not going to be dancing on TikTok. No, I'm not dancing on TikTok. Not my thing. Abigail, thank you. That's very, very kind. Just checking something here. Interesting. Pamela O'Connor with an interesting observation or just a comment. The lawyer needs to be as believable as the defendant. Being credible, believable, the voice of reason in a courtroom is a powerful, powerful thing. And who emerges as the chief voice of reason to the jurors is a big deal. But it is, let's not forget at the same time, the lawyer, attorneys are there, while they are there to present and then, put the evidence in a position to succeed. It really comes down to the evidence and the testimony. That's what it really comes down to. Just like a symphony orchestra, you can point to the conductor who is making sure that everybody stays in rhythm, but what it really comes down to is the music. It's similar in a courtroom. When you leave at the end of the day, are you going to really be focusing on the music or on the conductor? Now, you remember when you go to the orchestra, you remember the music. The music is what resonates with you. Just like how, in this case, and as how it should be for the jury, it's the evidence and the testimony that should resonate, not the person, of course, who is introducing it into a court of law and discussing it and putting it into context for people. Michael, I don't know what he's studying. Buster Murdaugh. I do not know what he's studying. It's a very interesting question. I don't know. But I do know that he was the son who was expected to really kind of follow in his father's footsteps. That I do remember from all the reporting that's been done on the Murdaughs. Jennifer with an observation. #KJB. I thought the state sounded powerful, professional, and direct. The defense came off as a buddy of Murdaugh's, trying to save his beep. He was confusing, hard to follow, not believable. Again, this is just an observation from the opening statements from Jennifer, one of our commenters. And I really appreciate that because that provides us with some ideas to what the jury might have thought when they were hearing these two sides present their opening statements. This is a big question that looms if Alex Murdaugh didn't commit these murders. Who did? An excellent question from Miss Scafaro. Harry, that's a very kind comment. Thank you. I don't want to bring it up on stream because if I bring up enough kind comments like that, people are going to think that I'm just putting up kind comments. And no, Natalie, I'm not going to say Mr. Ferguson's name. Oh, man, Peter's on live? Yeah. I think we can get the meeting of the minds together. I'm going to hop off here. I got another 5 minutes with you guys. 5 minutes, maybe even less. I very much encourage you to go follow Peter. I'm biased in that way because I find Peter to be a very reliable source of information, one that I like to that's why I invite him on stream. Peter Tragos, the lawyer you know, is who I'm referencing, who's been with us on stream many times, been with us here in the Stream Center now multiple times, I'm proud to say, because it's great that our new digital studio space, I'll bring that up on screen, it's great when I actually have people to be able to come to the Stream Center and talk with us about these cases. What's interesting is that most people just want to, most of our experts will appear via Zoom now, but I love having that position, and that position full. The more people that we have on stream, the better it is. As I say, teamwork makes the stream work. So yeah, I'm going to take one or two more. Dottie, is Alex Murdaugh's middle name Brian? No, his middle name is Alex. Alexander. His first name, I believe, is Richard. J Banks, hashtag AJB, are the police still looking for alternate suspects? No, I believe that this is they have conducted their investigation. I believe that they have their suspect, and that's why the suspect is in a court of law facing the charges. If the police were still actively and openly acknowledging the potential for there being a suspect that wasn't Alex Murdaugh, of course, that speaks for itself. I know that people have asked repeatedly if there is a chance that this was a crime that was committed by multiple people. That has been brought up, but so Heidi says Buster's supposedly attempting to get back into law school. Okay, I'll look into that. Thank you for the comment. One or two more, and then we got to get going. Taylor, hashtag HeyJB, will you be working with Brian Enton on this? Let me talk about Brian Enton. Talk about Brian Enton for a quick moment. Brian is, I'm very happy for Brian Enton. He is, if there's a big story in this country, News Nation sends him. But he is predominantly, when it comes to this, as News Nation grows as a brand, he's mostly on News Nation. So I have talked to Brian. I talk to Brian all the time. Brian's great, but Brian has his responsibilities. And so Brian knows that the format that we do things here at WFLA is long form. So I'm on stream with you guys for a long time, sometimes hours and hours and hours. If you followed during Petito, if you followed, of course, during Cassie Carley, some of the bigger cases that we've done, Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, streaming is long form. And Brian, I love to keep Brian on for as long as possible. And Brian usually only has a very short amount of time, to the point where by the time that we even get to questions and comments coming in, he would probably have to go and return to his responsibilities at News Nation. But I will say, and if this clip finds it to Brian, you're always invited. Brian Enton is one of the few people in the world who has a permanent invitation to our streams. And Brian knows this, but I need to get him in a chair here. I want him to one day come and hang out with me in Tampa, and so that we can have a conversation about these stories, talk about the stories that we cover, because oftentimes our assignments are very parallel. And so, Brian Enton, if you're watching this clip, you are always invited to our live stream. But of course, everybody knows that Brian Enton is not of WFLA. He is of News Nation. But hopefully, Brian Enton can join us at some point in the coming weeks. Oh, Lutina says Peter isn't live now. Is that true? Okay, so he's live tonight at 8:30. Well, you can watch him for half an hour and then come and watch our conversation at 9 o'clock on TikTok Live. Marie, back on track. Raising your voice is often a way to show the seriousness of the situation. I thought the prosecutors did it in a professional way. This is interesting because, Marie, I totally respect your opinion, but I want to acknowledge this is an opinion. So that Marie says raising your voice is often a way to show the seriousness of the situation. Some people could argue that raising your voice feels different to them as far as the meaning and the purpose behind it, raising the volume of your voice. And so, Marie, it's very possible that some of the jurors felt this way. Maybe all of them did, maybe none of them did. It's an interesting observation about what you thought of Mr. Waters and his decision to raise his voice quite a bit. Wow. Let me bring this up only because first I'll bring up Dina. Dina, one of our great moderators, says the dream team, JB and Brian. Yeah, Brian is my original stream buddy. So would love to get him back on stream. It's not the last time we've streamed with Brian Enton, believe me. Like I said, he has a permanent invitation, which means I never invite him because he knows he's always invited. But he has his responsibilities to News Nation. But somebody else brought up in the comment section that something I really want to emphasize, and I might have to end out our stream on this. There's a developing story in Tampa. Big story in Tampa Bay. And it involves pirates. And they're going to be invading the city of Tampa on Saturday, as we've learned through various sources. If you have not heard of Gasparilla, Google it. Gasparilla is the big pirate festival in Tampa. It is a yearly tradition going back many, many years where quite literally a ship of the ship is called the Jose Gaspar, the Jose Gasparilla. A ship of hundreds of pirates makes its way into Tampa Bay, comes down the channel right outside our station, not too far from the station, and invades the city and holds the mayor of this city hostage. If you've never seen Gasparilla, it's this Saturday. We cover it every year. It is an annual thing that we do. WFLA is your official Gasparilla station. It is the biggest festival in Tampa. It is Tampa's signature event. New Orleans has Mardi Gras. New York City has the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. Tampa Bay, Tampa, Florida has Gasparilla. It is like Mardi Gras, except with pirates. Everyone is dressed as pirates. No one behaves. It is anarchy, but in a fun way. And so if you want to see me dressed as a pirate with a pirate hat on, that is what my bosses asked me to do. So on Saturday at 11:30, we are here live on stream, and this respectable news journalist will be transformed into a pirate on stream, as he is every year. There are clips on the internet of me dressed as a pirate. It is all for Gasparilla, our coverage of a very joyous event in Tampa, Florida. And I really hope, I can only hope, that some of you will come and join us for a live stream about something that isn't involving, the evil forces of our world, but something quite rather actually more fun and positive. The legacy of pirates on Florida's Gulf Coast and the legacy of Gasparilla. So I'll end out on that, pushing to our coverage on Saturday, 11:30. Yes, as people are noting in the comment section, go give the lawyer, Peter Tragos, a shout out. Say that you came here and maybe you guys can let Peter know that I was talking about him so kindly on stream. You can say to Peter that JB said I should come give you a watch. Please do that. Peter's great. He's one of the great streamers here in the Tampa Bay area. He's over in Clearwater, and he's going to be talking about this tonight on his live stream. And then additionally, I will be on TikTok live tonight at 9 o'clock. And it's not just to talk about Alex Murdaugh. We're going to talk about all the big cases. We're also going to be talking about the future of news, how TikTok fits into the evolving news space, and how we're going to be taking your questions too, and talking about how the news industry is shifting and changing, and rooms like these are getting built in various corners of the world. So I really hope that you'll join us. For those who are fascinated by how people learn of information. I went to college and I studied in mass communication and new technologies. That was my concentration at school, and it's a topic to me that is very something that I love to discuss. If you are somebody who likes to nerd out about how news is consumed and how the news industry is changing, and how people, their habits are changing and perhaps going less from, leaving TV more and focusing more on online content like now, that we're going to be talking about that tonight on live stream. It'll be on TikTok Live at WFLAJB on TikTok. Maybe I can ask one more favor of our moderators to put my my TikTok page, the link to that, in the comment section here. That would be super appreciated, you guys. And hope to see you over there on a different platform. I've never done TikTok Live before. I have no idea how it's going to go. Could be great and a major success. Could be the opposite. We're gonna find out. In all seriousness, though, back to coverage. Our coverage resumes tomorrow morning of the Alex Murdaugh murder trial. It begins. Our coverage begins at 9 a.m. in advance of the 9:30 first full day of the jury trial itself. And I look forward, of course, to being here in the Stream Center, talking about it more and more with you guys. So thank you so much. The very latest on this on WFLA.com, the WFLA app. Over the next coming weeks, you can find our coverage of the Alex Murdaugh murder trial. It's on WFLA.com, the WFLA app. 9 p.m. tonight, TikTok Live. 9 a.m. tomorrow, our coverage resumes on WFLA Now. And Saturday at 11:30, Gasparilla coverage live from the Stream Center with myself, Amanda Holly, Jack Royer, WFLA's Nicole Rogers, our WFLA team on full display as pirates invade the city of Tampa. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you next time here on WFLA Now.